Good afternoon. This is the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. We just got back from the House floor. It is May 8th at 3:46 p.m. And now we have our legislative counsel, Cameron Wood, here to do a walkthrough of the Senate proposal amendment to H 398 and act relating to the Vermont Economic Development Authority. Hi, Cameron.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Anna Grace, I just sent a request to share my screen. For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you mentioned, this is 398 for my Economic Development Authority. If you all recall, there's the Disaster Recovery Loan Fund towards the end of this bill. And there were some minor proposals of amendment that came over from the Senate initially. You all had possession, and there was a amendment that was offered because there are some other disaster recovery loan funds that are being proposed, and there was some concern about entities potentially receiving funds from multiple different sources. There was a limited amount of funds that are going to go into this disaster recovery loan fund from VEDA. And so what I simply pulled up was the proposal that you all, the House, sent back to the Senate, just for, kind of reminder purposes. You added this subdivision E, which said that a business shall not be eligible for financial assistance from the Disaster Recovery Loan Fund if the business has received disaster recovery financial assistance from the state for the same disaster event. You all sent that back over to the Senate. Senate Finance reviewed it, discussed it, thought that that was a little too strict, if you will, and they felt that, I can't really speak for them, but the discussion was concerned that, these are loans, they do have to be repaid back, and they didn't want to preclude any entity from being able to access these funds simply because they were receiving some other financial assistance from the state. They thought that was a little too strict. And so they came back with this proposal. So it's simply striking that subsection that you all added in, inserting their own new language, which says that in determining whether to issue financial assistance from the Disaster Recovery Loan Fund, the authority shall consider whether a business has received disaster recovery financial assistance from the state for the same disaster event. So nearly identical language, simply doesn't preclude the business from being eligible for the funds and allows VEDA, requires VEDA to take that into consideration. That's all it does. I'll pause there.
Great. Any questions, committee? You're a tough crowd. Okay. I believe that going to morning we'll have the straw poll vote on this. So at this point, we're just hearing from Cameron what they have in mind for us. And if we have no question for the camera, then I guess we.
Oh, I don't know if it's for camera, but just a general comment, perhaps. Doesn't this new language put more of a burden on VEDA that they wouldn't have had under our proposal, which was much more flip the switch on or flip the switch off?
This gives them discretion, right?
I would say to answer your question, it gives them the discretion, whether they consider that, more burdensome or not. I would leave to them to answer that question directly. I can imagine being in their position. It's easier if it's a prescriptive, you shall not give loans to these people. It makes it much easier for them. You either have received state financial assistance or you haven't. And if you have, then we don't have to spend the resources of reviewing the application and comparing those relative to other businesses. So if one wanted that discretion, then, I would prefer this language because it gives them the ability to weigh that among probably other factors. So
Just a follow-up comment. This would all be done in the aftermath and perhaps the immediate aftermath of the disaster that everybody's hustling around trying to respond to. So whether it's problematic or not, just offering.
That's a good question.
That's a fair point.
I mean, it's a fair point, but I think on the other hand, I mean, we give these organizations authority to make these decisions for us. So if they, you know, anything that we can give them that gives them a little more flexibility, I think is helpful, because there's, every situation is different.
I agree with you.
Do you know whether Vita itself weighed in on this? So they did not.
They did not in committee,
Yeah.
whether they
Whether
weighed
they did
in.
that, yeah, I
Yes, sir, whether they weighed in separately to individual members, I have not spoken with Vita or run it by them.
My inclination would be that they're reviewing the application anyway, you know, and they're probably spending time on, I mean, it's an application, so I don't know. I would tend to give them some flexibility unless it was something that they just didn't want.
Right.
I mean, that was
Yeah.
that was honestly my initial thought,
I'd
but I
agree.
think Dave's point about the idea that these are supposed to get out quickly with as little friction as possible. Is maybe the thing that's the thing that's got me a little,
That's a good point.
you know.
Maybe we could find out from Vita.
Yeah, we can have.
Like, how much
I wonder if we can have Vita,
Yeah, whether
We
they would
may
do
have had that
it.
conversation.
How much friction does it have?
Wouldn't be surprised if my
maybe
concern.
we can get them in here like on Zoom or something tomorrow morning, just get there and put what we said before we straw poll it, you know?
Right.
Anything else?
Thank you, Cameron.
You're welcome. If you have any questions or if something comes up between now and tomorrow morning, feel free to reach out and otherwise, it will be up for action tomorrow. So let me know if you need anything.
Good, thank you.
Deal.
All right, committee, I guess that's it for today. And as said, we're back at tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, where we'll zoom talking about that before we go to the floor. And then after the floor, with 10 minutes after, we're going to be discussing on AmeriCorps federal funding impact with Serve, Learn and Earn. And then we'll break for lunch and we have a field trip to the state archives in the afternoon. So with